Hey everyone, today we're diving into a really intense sermon that paints a pretty dramatic picture of the future. It's from a YouTube channel called Midnight Cry, and it breaks down a cryptic prophecy from the book of Revelation to make the case that the world is barreling towards a massive spiritual showdown.
So this is the big idea, right at the top. The sermon claims that, in the end, there's no more middle ground, no more atheism, just a black and white choice between two global religions. And this, according to the sermon, is what sets the stage for a final worldwide religious war.
So, you might be asking, how does the sermon even get to this idea of a global religious war? Well, the whole interpretation, and I mean everything, hinges on a single super symbolic woman described in chapter 17 of Revelation. According to the speaker, if you can figure out who she is, you've got the key to understanding the end time.
And that brings us to the big question the sermon is trying to answer. The biblical text uses this really provocative title, and the speaker spends the entire sermon just unpacking what he believes this figure actually represents and why it is so important for what's to come.
Okay, let's dive into the actual interpretation. Now, the first thing the speaker makes crystal clear is we are not talking about a literal person here. No, this is a symbol for something way, way bigger. And here it is, the core definition according to the sermon. The speaker argues this figure represents a single unified global religious system, one that basically betrays the true faith in order to worship a false messiah, a figure known in these prophecies as the Antichrist.
So how does this all supposedly happen? Well, the sermon lays out a few key steps. It all kicks off with what it calls a huge betrayal, where parts of Christianity just abandon their original beliefs. Then, this new system manages to unite all the world's faiths into one massive organization that comes to power with shocking speed.
Okay, but how on earth could one single religion become that powerful and get so many people on board? Well, according to the sermon, the answer is pretty simple. It's all about worldly appeal. It's got tangible power, incredible wealth, and a whole lot of influence.
For instance, the sermon points to the part of the Bible that describes this figure as being dressed in purple and scarlet. The interpretation here is that this is all about symbolizing massive earthly power, like royalty. It's meant to show that this religion will wield power just like a global kingdom.
And it doesn't stop there. The text also says she's gleaming with gold, precious stones, and pearls. Again, according to the sermon, this isn't just decoration. It's meant to show incredible wealth and a focus on material splendor, which is a pretty stark contrast to spiritual humility.
And this right here, this is a huge piece of the puzzle. The sermon claims this religious system won't just be about faith. It'll be completely tangled up with world leaders and governments, using its political connections to enforce its authority everywhere.
So, you gotta wonder, why would people fall for this? The sermon argues that it's going to be incredibly persuasive, almost irresistible. I mean, think about it. Instead of faith in a God you can't see, this religion offers a visible, charismatic leader who performs miracles and even brings about world peace. It's a message the world wants to hear, and it's got the stamp of approval from all the major governments.
So, when you have a global powerhouse like this on the rise, what happens next? Well, according to the sermon, it leads to a massive conflict. But hold on, we're not talking about a war with tanks and bombs. This is a war for people's hearts and minds, a war over truth itself.
The sermon's logic goes like this. Once this system grabs power, it will immediately start to crush any opposition. It's going to use all that global authority to isolate and persecute anyone who holds on to what the speaker defines as the true gospel.
And just to show you how intense this conflict is supposed to be, the speaker points to this really chilling prediction. The division will be so deep, so profound, that it will shatter the closest bonds we have, turning parents and kids against each other over what they believe.
Okay, so all of this is building up to the sermon's big finale, its climax. And it's all about a final, stark choice. The speaker does this by putting the false church right up against another symbolic woman from the text, one he interprets as the true church.
All right, check this out. This table basically sums up the entire sermon in one shot. Let's just walk through it real quick. You've got allegiance. One side is with the Antichrist, the other with Jesus Christ. Then look at their appearance. Total opposites, right? Worldly riches versus heavenly light. Their message is completely different, and maybe most importantly, so is their destiny. One, the sermon says, is headed for destruction, while the other is united with Christ.
So this all leads to the sermon's big conclusion. And it's not just a prediction, it's a call to action.
The speaker isn't just telling a story about the future, he's given his listeners some really urgent warnings and instructions for what to do.
And here's a really ironic twist in the sermon's prediction. It says that the Antichrist and his political allies, the very same powers that use this global religion to get to the top, will eventually get tired of it, turn on it, and just completely destroy it.
And that brings us to the final piece of advice the speaker gives his audience. It's basically a three-step plan. First, he says, come out, meaning get away from any system that looks like this prophecy. Second, reject false gospels. Don't get tricked by a message that's all about worldly power. And finally, step 3, discern the truth for yourself so you don't get swept away by it all.
And that's where we'll leave this explainer. The Midnight Cry sermon lays out this really detailed, dramatic vision of the future, a future built around a huge global conflict of belief. And in the end, whether you buy into this interpretation or not, it kind of leaves all of us with a pretty big question to think about. When faith and power get all tangled up like that, how do you figure out what's really true?